She thought he was a waiter until she saw him on TV as a billionaire. Before we begin the story, where are you watching from? Have you watched first part? Comment below and enjoy. Sienna straightened, refusing to be intimidated by Victoria's scrutinizing gaze. The woman carried herself with the kind of poise that came from old money and power, her every move deliberate and calculated. Adrian's expression remained unreadable, but his voice carried a sharp edge. What do you want, Victoria? Victoria smirked, taking a slow step forward. I'm here to offer some advice. Sienna crossed her arms, and I'm supposed to believe you're doing this out of the kindness of your heart? Victoria chuckled, her dark eyes gleaming. No, darling, I don't do kindness, but I do believe in survival, and right now, you're walking into a war you don't even understand. Sienna tilted her head. Then why don't you enlighten me? Victoria glanced at Adrian before stepping closer to Sienna, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel personal. Damien isn't just playing a game, she said. He's setting the board. And right now, you're standing in the middle of it. Sienna refused to let the words shake her. What exactly does Damien want from me? Victoria's lips curled. That depends. How much are you willing to risk? Before Sienna could respond, Adrian stepped between them, his voice cool. That's enough. Victoria sighed, as if she were disappointed but not surprised. Oh, Adrian, always so protective. She turned back to Sienna, her gaze unreadable. Be careful, Miss Hazen. Men like Adrian and Damien don't fight fair. And if you're not careful, you won't even see the trap until it's already closed around you. With that, she turned on her heel and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor. Sienna exhaled, glancing at Adrian. I'm starting to think I should have just had a quiet night at home. Adrian's jaw clenched. This is exactly what Damien wants, to make you second-guess your place here. Sienna narrowed her eyes. My place? Where? Adrian? In your life, or in whatever war you and Damien are fighting? He didn't answer right away, and that silence told her everything. Sienna turned away, exhaling sharply. She had walked into this world thinking it was just one night. But now, she wasn't sure she'd be able to walk out at all. Sienna paced her apartment later that night, her thoughts tangled in everything that had happened at the gala. Adrian's world wasn't just built on power and wealth. It was built on silent battles, whispered threats, and unseen traps. She had always been in control of her life, navigating the high-pressure world of law with confidence. But this was different. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She hesitated before picking it up, her stomach tightening when she saw the name on the screen. Adrian. For a brief second, she considered ignoring it, but she knew that wouldn't make any of this disappear. She answered, keeping her voice steady. What do you want? Adrian exhaled as if he had expected the coldness in her tone. I just wanted to make sure you got home safe. I'm fine, she said shortly. A pause. You're angry. Sienna let out a humorless laugh. You think? Adrian's voice dropped slightly. You have every right to be. She gripped the phone tighter. Then why do I feel like you're still not telling me everything? Another pause. Because I'm not... Sienna closed her eyes, the weight of those words settling over her. She had expected as much, but hearing him admit it made it worse. Adrian, I'm not some fragile woman who can't handle the truth. You either trust me enough to tell me what's going on, or you let me walk away from this now. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Adrian spoke, his voice lower, more serious. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. But know this. Damien doesn't just lose interest. You were on his radar the second you walked into that gala with me. Sienna swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. So, what are you saying? That I don't have a choice anymore? You always have a choice, Adrian said, but whether you like it or not, you're in this now. And Sienna exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. Then I guess I need to start playing the game. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. I knew there was a reason I liked you, Sienna. Before she could respond, the call ended, leaving her standing in the dim glow of her apartment, the city lights flickering outside her window. She had a choice to make, and whatever she decided, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Sienna didn't sleep much that night. Her mind replayed every moment of the gala, every warning, every look exchanged between Adrian and Damien. The idea that she was now a part of something far bigger than herself sent a cold shiver down her spine. By morning, she had made her decision. If she was already in the game, then she needed to learn the rules. which was why, later that evening, she found herself stepping into the sleek lobby of Sinclair Enterprises. The receptionist glanced up, momentarily surprised, before regaining her professional demeanor. "Good evening, Miss Hayes. Mr. Sinclair is expecting you." "Of course he is," Sienna muttered under her breath. She was led to a private elevator that took her straight to the top floor. The doors opened to reveal a breathtaking office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, and in the center of it all stood Adrian, his hands in his pockets, watching her as if he had known she would come. "I wasn't sure you'd show," he said. Sienna stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "I told you. I'm not running." Adrian studied her, his blue eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Then let's stop pretending you're just an outsider in all of this." She crossed her arms. "Good, because I want answers." A small smirk played at his lips. "I figured." He gestured toward a sleek black chair in front of his desk. "Sit." Sienna hesitated for only a second before lowering herself into the chair. Adrian leaned against the edge of his desk, his gaze locked onto hers. "Tell me everything about Damien," she said. "No half-truths, no cryptic warnings, just the truth." Adrian exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. "All right, you want the truth?" "Yeah." "Then you need to understand one thing, Sienna. He didn't just lose business when my father shut him out. He lost everything, and now he wants payback." Sienna frowned. "Payback? How?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "By taking apart everything that belongs to me, piece by piece." The weight of his words settled between them. "And you think I'm one of those pieces?" Adrian held her gaze. "I know you are." Sienna swallowed, her stomach twisting. She had walked in expecting answers. She hadn't expected to find herself at the center of a war. Sienna leaned forward, her pulse thrumming in her ears. "You really believe Damien will come after me?" Adrian's expression was unreadable, but his voice was firm. "I don't believe it. I know it." Sienna exhaled sharply, gripping the arms of the chair. "And what do you suggest I do? Just disappear? Pretend none of this is happening?" Adrian smirked, though there was no amusement in his eyes. "That's the problem, Sienna. You were never invisible to him in the first place." The weight of his words settled deep in her chest. "So what now?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Adrian's gaze darkened, and he straightened, moving around the desk. "Now we make a choice." Sienna frowned. "What kind of choice?" He sat on the edge of his desk, his piercing blue eyes never leaving hers. "Damien thrives on unpredictability. He expects you to get scared. He expects you to walk away." She lifted her chin. "Then I won't." A slow, approving smirk crossed Adrian's face. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Sienna narrowed her eyes. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Adrian hesitated for a moment before speaking. "If Damien thinks you're just some passing interest of mine, he'll keep pushing, waiting for you to be discarded. But if he believes you're more than that, if he sees you as something permanent, he'll have to rethink his strategy." Sienna's heart stuttered. "And what exactly are you saying?" Adrian leaned closer, his voice smooth but laced with something more. "I'm saying we make him believe you're untouchable." Sienna's breath caught. "Untouchable how?" Adrian's lips curved slightly. "We make him believe you're mine." The air between them crackled with something dangerous, something that sent shivers down her spine. "You want to fake a relationship?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "Not just any relationship," Adrian corrected. "A public, undeniable, high-stakes relationship, one that makes it clear that anyone who tries to use you against me will have to deal with me." Sienna exhaled, her mind spinning. "And what happens when the game is over?" Adrian's smirk faded, his gaze darkening. "Then we'll see who wins." Sienna swallowed hard. This wasn't just about playing a role. It was about stepping onto the board as Adrian Sinclair's queen. And once she did, there would be no turning back. Sienna stared at Adrian, her mind racing. Everything in her life had been carefully built on logic and control, yet here she was, being asked to step into a role she had never imagined. Adrian Sinclair's public girlfriend. And not just for show. She could already see the headlines. Adrian Sinclair's mysterious new romance. Who is Sienna Hayes? If she agreed to this, there would be no escaping the spotlight. And yuck, You really think this will make Damien back off? She asked, folding her arms. Adrian's expression remained unreadable. He doesn't like to play games he can't win. If he sees you as more than a passing distraction, he'll have to find another way to come at me. Sienna exhaled. And what happens if he doesn't back off? Adrian's gaze darkened. Then we'll be ready for him. There was something about the way he said we that sent a shiver down her spine. He wasn't asking her to sit on the sidelines. If she agreed to this, she was in it, all the way. And once she crossed that line, there would be no going back. She tapped her fingers against the chair's armrest, weighing the risks. On one hand, this could destroy her carefully built reputation. She wasn't a billionaire or a socialite. She was a lawyer. A woman who had worked too hard to be reduced to a tabloid headline. On the other hand, Damien had already made it clear that she wasn't just an outsider anymore. Whether she liked it or not, she was in his sights. She met Adrian's gaze, steady and unwavering. Fine, I'll do it. A slow, approving smirk tugged at Adrian's lips. Smart choice. But she wasn't finished. On one condition, she added. Adrian arched a brow. Which is? This stays fake, she said firmly. No blurred lines, no real feelings. For a brief second, something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Something unreadable. Agreed, he said, offering his hand. Sienna hesitated only a moment before shaking it. His grip was firm, warm, but dangerous in ways she couldn't quite define. She had just made a deal with the devil, and somehow she knew she was going to regret it. The next morning, Sienna woke up to a storm of missed calls and unread messages. Word had already started to spread. She groaned as she reached for her phone, scrolling through the flood of notifications. Olivia had sent no less than 10 texts, each one more frantic than the last. Olivia, tell me this is fake. I mean, it has to be fake, right? Sienna, answer your phone. You're dating Adrian Sinclair? Sienna rubbed her temples. So much for easing into this. A call from an unknown number flashed on her screen. She hesitated before answering. Good morning, Miss Hayes, came a crisp, professional voice. This is Caroline Marks, Adrian Sinclair's publicist. I'm calling to brief you on today's press strategy. Sienna blinked. What? There has been speculation since last night's gala, but Adrian has authorized a controlled confirmation. That means an exclusive will be released later today to establish your relationship as fact. Sienna sat up straighter. And what exactly is this exclusive saying? That you and Adrian have been seeing each other privately for months and that last night was your first public appearance as a couple. We will also release a curated set of photos for the media to circulate. Her stomach twisted. Curated photos? Adrian has already taken care of that. He'll be picking you up in an hour for a breakfast date. We'll have photographers stationed at select points. You'll need to behave naturally, smiling, light touches, easy, chemistry. Sienna's pulse kicked up a notch. You're telling me I have an hour to prepare for an ambush photo shoot disguised as a date? Think of it as setting the foundation, Caroline said smoothly. The better the performance, the more believable the relationship. The line went dead before Sienna could argue. Her head spun. One minute she was a woman living a perfectly normal life, and the next she was being briefed by a billionaire's publicist on how to sell a fake relationship. And the worst part? She wasn't even sure she could pull it off. A sharp knock at her door snapped her out of her thoughts. She hurried to open it, only to find Adrian Sinclair standing there, dressed in a crisp navy suit, looking completely at ease. Good morning, sweetheart, he said smoothly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Sienna stared at him, torn between frustration and disbelief. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Adrian smirked. Immensely. Sienna exhaled sharply. This was going to be one hell of a long day. Sienna barely had time to process before Adrian was guiding her out the door, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The warmth of his touch sent an unwanted shiver up her spine, but she forced herself to focus. Just act normal, she reminded herself. This is just a performance. Adrian's sleek black car was already waiting outside, and as soon as they stepped onto the sidewalk, she spotted them, photographers strategically positioned, pretending to be casual passersby. Sienna swallowed hard. So this is what it's like to be in the public eye? Relax, Adrian murmured, close to her ear. You're doing fine. She fought the urge to roll her eyes, but plastered on a smile as he opened the car door for her. Once inside, she let out a breath, staring at him. "This feels insane," she admitted. Adrian smirked. "Welcome to my life." The car pulled away, weaving through Manhattan's streets as if nothing was unusual, but everything was unusual. Sienna was about to be paraded in front of cameras, branded as the woman in Adrian Sinclair's life, and there was no undoing it. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Café Laurent," Adrian said. "It's exclusive, but not too exclusive. The right kind of people will be there to see us." "Great," she muttered. "So I'm not just your fake girlfriend. I'm a spectacle." Adrian chuckled. Don't worry, sweetheart. By the time we leave, you'll be a natural at this." She shot him a glare. "I don't appreciate you enjoying this so much." "I find it fascinating," he admitted, tilting his head slightly. "You're stepping into something completely foreign to you, and yet you haven't run. Most people would have by now." Sienna folded her arms. "Maybe I don't like being underestimated." Adrian's smirk softened into something unreadable. "Neither do I." The car pulled up to the cafe, and before she could prepare herself, Adrian was already stepping out, extending a hand toward her. The moment she took it, she heard the clicks of cameras. "Showtime." She forced a natural smile, letting Adrian lead her inside. The cafe was filled with elegantly dressed patrons, and as soon as they walked in, heads turned. Sienna felt the weight of the scrutiny. They were watching, analyzing, judging. Adrian guided her to a private corner booth, keeping close. The waitress arrived almost immediately, barely glancing at the menu before addressing Adrian in a too familiar tone. "Mr. Sinclair, it's a pleasure," she purred, her gaze lingering a little too long. Sienna raised an eyebrow but kept her expression neutral, so this is what she had to expect. Women who didn't care that Adrian was supposedly spoken for. Adrian didn't seem fazed. "Coffee black," he said, then glanced at Sienna. She smirked slightly. "Cappuccino, with extra foam." The waitress nodded, but her focus remained on Adrian. "Let me know if you need anything else." Sienna didn't miss the way Adrian's jaw tensed slightly. He waited until the waitress left before leaning in. "Jealous already?" She scoffed. "Please, I just think you could set some clearer boundaries." Adrian chuckled, sipping his water. "You're learning fast." Their drinks arrived moments later, and Sienna forced herself to ignore the photographers outside the window, snapping away. "This is only the beginning," Adrian murmured. She exhaled, gripping her cup. She knew that. But the real question was, how far was she willing to take this? Sienna tried to focus on the warmth of the cappuccino in her hands, but it was hard to ignore the constant flashes from outside. Every move she made, every glance she shared with Adrian was being captured, analyzed, and turned into a story. "This is surreal," she muttered under her breath. Adrian smirked, leaning slightly closer. "You get used to it." "I don't want to get used to it," she admitted. His blue eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Then why didn't you walk away when you had the chance?" Sienna hesitated. She had asked herself the same question over and over. The truth was, a part of her knew this wasn't just about Damien anymore. She had options. She could have ignored the gala, distanced herself from Adrian, refused to play this game. But she hadn't. "Maybe I'm just stubborn," she said instead, trying to sound nonchalant. Adrian studied her, then let out a small chuckle. "I think it's more than that." Sienna wasn't sure she liked the way he saw through her so easily. Before she could respond, a shadow loomed over their table. Speak of the devil, Damien Lockwood stood there, hands in his pockets, an amused smirk playing on his lips. Adrian sighed. "If this is your attempt at a casual run-in, Damien, it's a little too convenient." Damien ignored him, his sharp gaze settling on Sienna. "You're playing your role well, Miss Hayes. Very convincing." Sienna arched a brow. "I wasn't aware I was supposed to be performing." Damien chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, sweetheart, you're in a world where everything is a performance. And you? You're the newest act." Adrian's expression darkened. "Walk away, Damien." "Or what?" Damien asked smoothly. "You'll pretend to be offended?" "The damage is already done, Adrian." "I wonder. How long will she last?" Sienna straightened. "Long enough to make you regret underestimating me." For the first time, Damien's smirk faltered slightly. Then he let out a low laugh. "I do like you, Sienna," he admitted, "which is why. I'll offer you this. One chance. to get out before this becomes more than just a game. Sienna's stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. I think I'll take my chances, she said. Damien held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slightly. You're cool. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, he walked away, leaving tension in his wake. Sienna exhaled, turned to Adrian. What the hell was that? Adrian clenched his jaw, a warning. Sienna picked up her cappuccino again, her hands steadier than she expected. Good. I like knowing exactly who I'm up against. Adrian's lips curled into a smirk, but there was something different in his gaze this time, something almost admiring. Then let's make sure you win. Sienna barely had time to process Damien's warning before Adrian reached for his phone, his expression unreadable. What are you doing? She asked. Calling my security team, Adrian said smoothly. If Damien's making threats in public, he's already moving behind the scenes. Sienna exhaled sharply, placing her cappuccino down. So what? You think he's going to make a move on me? I know he will, Adrian said, his voice deadly serious. He won't come at you directly. That's not his style. He'll chip away at you, waiting for you to break. Sienna met his gaze, her spine straightening. Then he's going to be waiting a long time. Adrian's lips curled slightly, something unreadable flickering in his expression. You keep surprising me, Sienna. She smirked. That's probably why you like having me around. Adrian didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back, fingers tapping against the table. If we're doing this, we need to control the story before Damien does. Sienna raised an eyebrow. And how do we do that? Adrian's smirk deepened. We give him something real to talk about. A sinking feeling settled in her stomach. What kind of real? Before she could react, Adrian leaned forward and took her hand in his touch warm and deliberate. The flashes from the photographers outside exploded instantly, capturing the intimate moment. Sienna's breath caught in her throat, but Adrian's gaze remained steady. They want a love story, he murmured. Let's give them one. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she realized this wasn't just a game anymore. This was a war, and she had just raised the stakes. The moment Adrian took her hand, Sienna knew there was no turning back. The cameras outside the cafe clicked frantically, capturing every angle of the intimate moment. To the outside world, they weren't two people caught in a high-stakes game. They were a couple in love. Sienna forced herself to stay composed, her fingers curling around his just enough to sell the act, but inside, she was unraveling. When Adrian finally pulled away, his smirk was subtle, but his eyes held something else. Satisfaction. That should do it, he murmured. Sienna exhaled sharply. You could have warned me. Where's the fun in that? Adrian teased. She shot him a glare, but before she could respond, her phone vibrated. A message from Olivia flashed across the screen. Olivia, you are officially all over the internet. Call me now. Sienna groaned. Great. Adrian glanced at her phone. Let me guess, your friend just saw the news? You don't say, she muttered, rubbing her temples. Before she could even begin to think about damage control, Adrian's own phone buzzed. He checked the screen, and in an instant, the teasing smirk vanished. His entire body tensed. What is it? Sienna asked, immediately on high alert. Adrian's jaw clenched, his voice dropping. It's Damien. He just sent me a message. Sienna's stomach twisted. What does it say? Adrian turned his phone so she could see. Well played, St. Clair. But let's see how your queen handles what comes next. A chill ran down Sienna's spine. Damien wasn't done with them. And whatever was coming next, she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Sienna stared at the message on Adrian's phone, the weight of Damien's words sinking deep into her bones. Well played, Sinclair. But let's see how your queen handles what comes next. The way he called her Adrian's queen sent an uneasy shiver through her. Damien wasn't just watching, he was planning his next move. Adrian's grip tightened around his phone. He's testing us. Sienna exhaled. And how do we stop him from winning? Adrian met her gaze, something dark and determined flickering in his blue eyes. We outplay him. Easier said than done, she muttered. Just then, Adrian's phone rang. Caroline, his publicist. He put her on speaker. Adrian, we have a problem, Caroline said, her voice tight. Let me guess, Damien? Adrian asked. Worse, Caroline said. Someone just leaked a story to the press. Sienna's stomach dropped. What story? Caroline hesitated. It claims that you, Sienna, We're paid to be with Adrian, that this entire relationship is a business deal, and that you're nothing more than a carefully crafted distraction. Sienna's breath caught. The article just went live, Caroline continued, and it's spreading fast. Sienna grabbed her phone, opening a news app. The headline was bold and unforgiving. Adrian Sinclair's latest romance a fake? Sources claim lawyer Sienna Hayes was hired for a billionaire love story. A wave of nausea rolled through her. He's turning the game against us, Adrian muttered, jaw clenched. Sienna exhaled, trying to steady herself. No, she corrected. He's trying to make me walk away. Adrian's gaze snapped to hers. But I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. His expression softened just slightly, but there was still fire in his eyes. Then let's end this. On our terms. Sienna nodded. One move left. If it was time to checkmate Damien Lockwood. Sienna sat across from Adrian in his penthouse office, the city skyline sprawling behind them. The tension in the room was thick, but beneath it lay something stronger. Resolve. Damien had made his move. Now it was their turn. Adrian set his phone down after ending a call with Caroline. The press is already running with the story, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Sienna exhaled it. And how do we counter it? Adrian leaned back in his chair, a slow, calculating smirk forming. We don't just counter it. We destroy it. Sienna arched an eyebrow. I'm listening. Adrian tapped his fingers against the desk. If the story claims you were paid to be with me, then we give them something that money can't buy. Sienna's heart skipped. What exactly are you suggesting? He stood, moving toward her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. We go public, he said smoothly. Not as a scandal, as a statement. Sienna frowned. How? Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolling to a press contact. We do an exclusive interview. Together. We control the narrative. We tell the world that this relationship is real. Sienna's chest tightened. But it isn't real, Adrian. His blue eyes darkened, something flickering behind them. Isn't it? She swallowed hard. This was a deal. Adrian studied her for a long moment before exhaling. Then let's give them the story they want, he murmured. One they won't question. Sienna crossed her arms. And what story is that? Adrian's smirk returned, slow and deliberate. An engagement. Her heart slammed against her ribs. You're insane. He stepped closer, tilting his head. Think about it. Damien wants to undermine us. We make our relationship undeniable. If we're engaged, it won't just erase the scandal. It'll make Damien look desperate. He'll be the man who tried to break apart a love story. Sienna inhaled sharply, her mind spinning. An engagement. A fake engagement? But as she looked at Adrian, his eyes locked onto hers. A terrifying thought crept into her mind. Had the lines blurred so much that neither of them could tell what was real anymore? She took a steadying breath. Fine, let's do it. Adrian's smirk deepened, but there was something else there now, something unreadable. Then prepare yourself, Sienna, because after this, you'll never be able to walk away. And as she shook his hand to seal the deal, she knew he was right. The game was over, and they had just won.